Let's play out the video of this incursion, of this collision in full. It's about 30 seconds, and then Hal will get you to respond. But take a look at all this.
By the way, look at the resolution. It's very impressive.
And Hal, as we're watching this, let's get into it. But what's the point of releasing this video? It's to show, hey, they did it, right?
Andrew, this is classic strategic communications. You know, the Russians went very far out in saying that, oh, we didn't do anything. We weren't, you know, this was, we were all but saying that they were benign, that they did nothing. And then, of course, this graphic video in, frankly, very high definition, showing precisely what they did, what we claim they did, and what they did. And there's another, I don't know if we have it here, which actually does show the propeller damaged from the pass. And you can actually see at least one or two of the blades that are compromised. So look, I look at what this does in the U.S., and I don't think within the U.S., with the U.S. audience, there was really any doubt as to what was going on. And certainly with the European audience, at least a Western, pretty much a Western European audience, they didn't have a lot of doubt. There were maybe some countries where this would have a lot of impact. For example, Hungary comes to mind, maybe Serbia. But where this really has impact in a strong visual statement, which completely refutes what Putin said, which basically in so many ways dramatically says that what their presentation of the events was a complete lie, is in Africa and the subcontinent of Asia. And in those places, this is going to get played over and over again. And some of those countries, their leadership are grappling with what to do in their historic relationship with Russia. And if a population sees this and can take this in, and I'm not saying the entire population will, but certainly those within the larger urban areas that have access to Wi-Fi, that have access to a lot of different means or modes of media, they take that in. You can see some very subtle changes over time. And this is one of those rare examples where the Russian propaganda machine has been caught completely bold-faced lying. And there's strong, compelling video evidence that really defies any other interpretation than what we've been saying, which is the truth.
Yeah. Hal, you and I yesterday, we were talking, these intercepts, these incursions, they happen so frequently. This one, though, they started it. This was very aggressive, very provocative. It seems like they wanted to bring it down.
Well, these intercepts are not new. They do them all the time. In fact, there was a former Air Force, the senior Air Force commander over in Europe some years back, had actually referenced at one point the danger of these Russian pilots and what they were doing with these intercepts, and basically predicted that at some point there will be a tragic mishap. And let's hope this is the most tragic mishap that ever happens, because this is an unmanned drone. Nobody was killed in what happened here, but they go in there, they do these things. The pilots are not as skillful as, say, their Western counterparts. They don't have as many flight hours. They don't go through all the levels of training that say a U.S. pilot would go through, or European pilots trained to the same standards. So they go in there and they do things like this. And with when you're flying in close formation, or flying in something where you're in very close proximity to another aircraft, the tiniest margin of error can have very catastrophic results. And we see what happened here. The tiniest margin of error and clipping the propeller, which eventually caused the Reaper to have to basically crash land in the water. Now, one thing I will say about the Reaper, even though the propeller was damaged, if you look at that wingspan is twice the length of the actual Reaper itself. That's one of the reasons it could stay up for so long, is because it has a tremendous lift ratio and can glide for a very long time. So once that was damaged, I have no doubt that they had already thought this through, that if there was some reason they had to crash land that Reaper for any reason on a mission. They probably had some designated places in the Black Sea, which are very deep, which would make it very difficult for anybody to try and recover. And that's probably what they did, was they immediately turned to one of those locations and they glided to it to put it into the optimal position that would minimize the chances that the Russians could recover it.
Okay.
One thing I will mention, though, is you saw those ships earlier.
Yeah,
They're all out there in the Black Sea. Russian ships have had a really tough time. Russian Navy's had a tough time with the Ukrainians.
Okay.
Using unmanned surface vessels, unmanned aerial vehicles, all sorts of creative ways. And now they present themselves as this big potential target out in the middle of the Black Sea.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
I have to believe the Ukrainians are looking at this saying, wonder if we could do something about that.
Wow.
So anyway, that's what I have to believe.
Yeah, Hal, I just wanted to put up, obviously, Jennifer Griffin's reporting, Liz Frieden's reporting at the Pentagon. Russian ships, like you said, they're at the MQ-9 drone crash site in the Black Sea. A U.S. defense official telling Fox News Russia sent ships to search the debris field almost immediately following the crash. That official said they wasted no time. Hal, let's get into another major development, this time on the battlefield in the war in Ukraine. I want to put up this tweet as well from Trey Yingst, Fox News senior foreign affairs correspondent. Poland to send 4 MiG-29 jets to Ukraine in the coming days. That's according to the Polish leader. All right, so the fighter jet conversation is operative. It is a go, at least on the part of Poland.
It's a big threshold. And you remember earlier last year in the conflict, we talked about sending some of these, the Eastern European states, the former Soviet countries, have a number of these old Soviet aircraft like MiG-29, still a very capable platform. Su-25s, which is more of a ground attack aircraft, similar to our A-10 Warthogs. I hate to make that comparison because I think our Warthogs are much better than theirs. But they have these, and they're trying to move them out of service. In many cases, they've been retired, and they're kind of mothballed, just sitting there, as they're trying to get in more capable, more modern airframes, Western airframes, if you will, from the U.S. and other allied countries. We wanted to move the MiG-29s over, but we were afraid that that'd be seen as very provocative, and we weren't quite sure what the Russians were going to do.
Yeah, and Hal.
And so, yes.
Hal, I mean, it was almost like this very moment last year where this was happening. This was playing out. It was almost like some type of international diplomatic incident. Poland didn't want to because it would be seen as escalation. There was talk about, some type of, land transfer of these MiG-29s. The Biden administration was really, not for it at all. They had said it would be seen as an escalation. And now we are here a year later, and it doesn't even seem like those considerations are still operative as well.
They're gone. No, yeah. We're not quite sure how they're going to move them over. They kind of left it open. They basically what they said is they're being transferred as we speak today. Now, nobody knows if that means they're flying them in, and if they're flying them in, they don't know if they're using Polish pilots or Ukrainian pilots. I remember last year when we were talking about this, they said we can't, they're basically one of the things they said, they can't fly into Ukrainian airspace. We had postulated, well, maybe you take it up to the border and you get a tractor and you pull it across the border to an airfield, and then you take off and take it to wherever it's got to go. That's a possibility that they're actually, they broke it down and they are shipping it by land. Don't know, but this is the first. These 4 are the first of what may be 12 in the initial transfer. Now, at one time, and certainly going up to last week, there was talk still of potentially up to 28 MiG-29s that the Poles could transfer over. If you go back before that, there was also discussion that the Slovakia might be the first to send MiG-29s over. They have somewhere around 10 or 11, maybe up to 12 that they could send over. So potentially, and right now they're in the middle of an election, so there's a little bit of tension about transferring the Slovak MiG-29s right now, just because of the tensions in their internal election between the two leading candidates. But if both of those could be sent, you could potentially be looking at up to 40 of these MiG-29s. Now, what's interesting is
0 to 40. Yeah, I mean that would be significant.
Yeah, it's huge. It's more than double what they have currently because they've lost so many. But also, what's interesting is that was never really. It was kind of alluded to. that the Su-25s, those ground attack aircraft, that Bulgaria may have transferred some of theirs earlier. And John Kirby said something that kind of left that open in one of the press conferences. Never heard hard confirmation, but it might be up to 14 Bulgarian Su-25s have already been transferred over. That's if you look at the total amount of aircraft that the Ukrainians have, that's a significant total. Then you add on to that the MiG-29s have been outfitted to carry Western weapons, something never originally conceived by any of the manufacturers. They can fire HARM missiles, which are anti-radiation missiles. So when they fly into a particular zone of action, if they were to get lit up by a radar, they could fire the HARM missiles. And the HARM missiles, which are extremely high speed, up to 2.9 Mach, will fly in and potentially take out that radar site and take out that anti-aircraft. Then they have the JDAM's extended range. Those are the ones we talked about, I think, a couple of weeks ago, which are the JDAMs that we use so effectively in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere, which are basically like glide bombs. And they can glide, and they're very precise within some cases a few meters of hitting their target. And they can go up to like 43 miles, which is a extremely long range. These can be fired from Russian aircraft, which, again, none of the manufacturers originally designed these to be fired from Russian or Soviet aircraft. I think they've all been modified. But that, with those planes, makes it a true force multiplier that I think could be significant in the conflict.
All right, yeah, and we'll have to track and see when these, get there, how many. They said about 4, and so we just have to keep an eye on this. As always, Hal Kempfer, we appreciate your insight into these major international headlines, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.